Hello, welcome. We are we're wrapping up 2024, a couple more days left. So, just how are you guys doing? Just get a feel for things. How was your 2024? We're going to, we'll be looking at some of the, nothing really. There's nothing really on the menu to talk about. Um, I read a couple of I guess you could say new comics, but mostly I've just been had my face buried in the stuff that I bought for myself for Christmas. And you know, I'm reading this stuff a little fast. I think I need to slow down a little bit. Um, but you know, haven't really watched any movies. You know, nothing too exciting has happened. You know, outside of I guess people are very excited about this Dragon Ball Daima thing. Which is that's interesting. That's something. AJ3 says I skipped his questions on the Q&A. Did you put them um in the thread? Because they weren't in the thread, I probably didn't see them. So I've been reading the Trigun manga. This volume 3 of Maximum is out, which is the fourth volume of the series. And the story is off the rails. It's completely and totally off the rails. I actually prefer the anime to the manga, to be honest, but I get what they're trying to do here. I understand what they're trying to do. But I guess Dragon Ball Daima is the thing that we should be talking about, huh? It's the story of the week. Dragon Ball Daima finally crashed the internet. It was something that had not done so. It was one Dragon Ball series that it was coming and going. Some people were talking about it, but not many. And then this happened. This week's Dragon Ball Daima absolutely set the internet on fire. And a lot of people started talking about the show. And they're not talking about the show in so much as they have started to love the show. They're talking about the show because Vegeta is now a Super Saiyan 3. And he wasn't before. And there's 100 videos being done about Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. I mean, there's 1,000 of them. And I just want to say that I'm glad that the last two episodes, at least, have been oriented towards the plot moving faster. That's been my big issue with Dragon Ball Diamond. Not it's the RPG kind of world building that they're doing. It's been largely the pacing has been garbage, and even on a rewatch, the pacing is still not going to be very good. But this year made me wish I listened to more albums, watched more movies and such, because I don't have like a history of like a list of best movies of the year or anything like that. I don't have any of that kind of stuff because I mostly avoided movies. I mostly avoided anything that has to do with media, and I've been doing my own thing. You know, so, you said what are my predictions or spoilers for 2025? I did that video. Yeah, if that was the question that you asked, I had that question on the Q&A. Well, that thing's 2 hours. I don't know if you listened to the whole thing or not, but I answered that question. I really don't have any. I have hopes. My hopes have not changed that much. And then you have to mean like, what do you mean by spoilers or predictions? You know, it's going to be a difficult. I don't think 2025 is going to be that difficult a year. But 2024 has been pretty bad. Hopefully things improve, But um, so there's a lot going on here. Hold on. What is going on here? All right. It is unseasonably warm, and I'm kind of scatterbrained because there's not much going on in the world right now. I know that Jimmy Carter just passed, and there's been a whole lot of shenanigans, but when it comes to pop culture, it's been pretty quiet in the last couple of weeks. I think the movies that have been successful have been mostly remakes of movies that already existed, which is pretty typical of of how the world has been the last couple of years. There's nothing new under the sun. I just watched this goofy movie Time Cop earlier, and I know I think it might be Tony Khan's favorite movie. I just watched it earlier. It's on Peacock, and as dumb as the movie is, and it's kind of, well, I don't want to say it's dumb. The premise is fine. What they do with the premise is actually was stupid. We don't have really that many creative shows like that anymore. I think I talked about this before, and I discussed it with our science fiction. Um, our lack of ingenuity, and this is going to bleed over into something else that I wanted to discuss. And because people are not all that creative anymore, what happens is typically people are afraid to take chances, and they're afraid to do common sense things. You know, um, I'm talking about in media because I just saw, and I don't know how true this is, that they're trying to make Lois Lane Superwoman again in the comic books, and I just rolled my eyes because the idea that somebody like Lois Lane has to be a superhero would never have crossed my mind because that's not what the character was created to do. That's not the character's role in the story of Superman. And what I mean by people don't want to take risks anymore is it is a risk to have a love and support interest that is a love and support interest, and that's it. You know, modern day storytelling says everybody has to move the plot forward. Everybody has to be in service or be in action, and that's not always the case. I'm kind of working myself into this because I put some thought into it, but I didn't put a lot of thought into it. And I realized that that's something that you don't see in manga, but it's something you see all the time in American comics. That the superhero has to have a superhero girlfriend, and the superhero girlfriend has to be just as good, if not better. And it really takes away from what the heroes do. You know, now sometimes you can get away with it. Most of the time you can't. But I prefer if you have a character that plays a certain role in the story. Now what brought me to this was not even anything recent. It wasn't even hearing that Lois Lane is about to be Superwoman again in the comic books. So that I wasn't tripping on that. She's already an action star in the absolute Superman universe where she's like a police officer or something. It's like it's not necessary. Why can't she just be a reporter? I don't know. Like it's dumb. But I was reading the Mighty Marvel Masterworks, Black Panther, and it focused on Black Panther's time in the Avengers during the 1960s and 70s. And Black Panther as an Avenger was living in New York and thus was not in Wakanda that often. Now, some of his stories revolved around him going to Wakanda, but the Black Panther story was that he was a teacher in Harlem and he was dating a social worker. Now that's sort of the story of the Black Panther that I knew when I was coming up, is that he was a teacher who I forgot what his was it Luke Charles or something like that? Charles Luke or something? I forgot already. But he was a character that was very interesting because they was doing what they did in the movie. They was doing it then, you know, having him toggle the line between social issues, racial issues, etc. And I realized like Monica Lynn as a love interest for T'Challa was very interesting. She was a social worker, so she was like this really woke young lady who was dating a ghetto teacher. I'm not sure. I don't, and she wasn't in the book a lot, but I think eventually she did come to know that he was Black Panther. Now, of course, over time they kind of phased her out, Monica Lynn. They moved her on, and then that's when I think it was Reginald Hudlin that decided that Black Panther needed to have Storm as a love interest because they're both Africans, even though they're two different kinds of African. Somehow, Storm, who's a Kenyan, knew and grew up in New York, somehow knew T'Challa, who was from Wakanda, and did not allow outsiders in Wakanda. But you could just it doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. Why let that stand in the way of what I want to do? But this is what I mean when I say characters should have a role in the story. Monica Lynn played an interesting role in the growth of who T'Challa is. Because he should be completely and totally somewhat, I shouldn't say completely and totally, he should be somewhat unaware of the plight of Black folks in the United States. And he can learn that from her. And she could help him grow as a person because Wakanda is supposed to be isolationist. So you can learn something from somebody who's not, for starters, living in another country, but somebody who's deeply rooted in that country. And Monica Lynn can learn something about Africa, or at least the Wakandans, and this was written in the 60s, of course. So we all know what the purpose of all that stuff was. Um, and I like the dynamic, you know. It was kind of coming to America-ish, but it was interesting to see that T'Challa could learn from somebody else about what it was like to be Black in the United States. That he would go into the schools and see for himself what it was like for the youth in the United States. And there was one interesting crossover they had with the Fantastic Four. So if you don't know anything about the Mighty Marvel Masterworks, it's a collection of stories around the same time that kind of further along the character. And part of it was Black Panther at the beginning of the book is thinking about being homesick and wanting to go back to Wakanda. And so it shows you his life in the United States and all the troubles that's going on in Wakanda and all that kind of stuff. And there's one story in there where he crosses over with the Fantastic Four, where they basically go to a fictional version of South Africa, where Ben Grimm is there and all this kind of stuff, and that was interesting, because it says that what's it called, Rudiana or something like that. It has hatred of blacks, and there's a black and colored bathroom and all that stuff. Why would you text right when I'm in the middle of something? I cannot stand that. It's so inconsiderate. And you learn, like, it's today it would be considered woke shit, right? Because you're like the Fantastic Four is fighting apartheid in South Africa. You know, the Black Panther gets arrested just for being black in fictional South Africa. But that's the kind of stuff you could do with him, and he was pretty much the only character you could do that stuff with, because I don't think Luke Cage had existed yet. Because Luke Cage would be created in what, 1971 or some 73 or something like that, and this was like in the late 60s. So using him to tell stories was fun, you know. And why they decided to go away from that kind of stuff is ridiculous to me, you know. And so when I read modern comics, and yeah, you still get the nagging girlfriend who has to tell you about yourself, but there's a utility to that, and there's a way you have to write it. You can't just get lazy and decide, oh, I'm just gonna throw the girlfriend in a superhero costume. Because I know that they made Mary Jane, she was a superhero for some reason, and had a superhero name, a superhero. Like, why? What what is wrong with Mary Jane being Mary Jane? And it's because a lot of people are they're uncomfortable with who they are and the role that they play in life, and they're uncomfortable with seeing people in support roles be supportive. But that's how life is. Everybody needs to have supportive figures in their lives. Not everybody has to go on the adventure. Somebody has to keep home safe. Somebody has to keep, keep things in touch. Somebody has to ground you. And that was the role that I think Monica Lind, as a love interest for T'Challa, she did a good job of that. You know, she kept him grounded because it's easy for him. This was before they started writing T'Challa as being like the most arrogant son of a bitch on Earth too, because that also I think began under Hudlin. Even though I'm about to read some 80s and 90s Black Panther too, so I'll get back to this. But when you read the Reginald Hudlin stuff, Black Panther's almost insufferable with his personality. I mean, he's about as bad as Namor. I'm just saying, like super cocky, and you're like, okay, well, it makes sense. His upbringing may make him that way, but he wasn't always that way. you know. So that's one thing to put in your back pocket. So therefore, a character that can keep him grounded would be fun. It would be interesting. One that could keep him connected to his roots, whatever those. Now his roots are obviously in Wakanda, but if he's going to be an American-based superhero, then that would be his roots would be in the United States, which would be the plight of the blacks in the United States. And spoilers, he obviously did not leave. he chose to stay. But you have to read the entire book, and it entered a lot of Avengers stories. It just follows his kind of this character arc of him being homesick and him hearing about all these terrible things that are going on back in Wakanda, and how he was considering quitting the Avengers to go back. And at one point, he says that he what did he say? He said that if he needs to fight crime or fight injustice, he should fight injustice all over the world, and that's why he decided to continue being an Avenger. But then you see, like, modern Black Panther, he's kind of like, the world is not my responsibility, Wakanda is, which is probably a little bit more accurate in terms of if you have a sort of royal character and he is the king of Wakanda. It is what it is. That kind of fits. But I like the general idea of him saying, look, injustice and crime and all these things, they happen outside of Wakanda too. And we can use our now Wakanda isn't as futuristic in those days as it is now. They still had a lot of Wakandans walking around barefoot and grass skirts, but that was the '60s. I mean, they were trying to really connect with that sort of thing, and that was very funny. But back to my original point, keeping people grounded is an important element in life and in writing. That there should be somebody to remind you of the things that are important, not just of life and death struggle, but of maintaining relationships. You know, keeping your word, raising your kids. Taking care of other responsibilities that are not saving the universe. Because most of the time, this is why superheroes usually made orphans because there are no parents they have to worry about. They don't give them kids because kids are another issue that they have to worry about. You keep the superhero single with no parents, and the friends are kind of they come and they go. Maybe there's a couple of friends who are there. Sometimes they're not. I mean, but those are people that they can be kidnapped and killed off and all that kind of stuff, right? And those characters can keep you grounded. But keeping people grounded is a very important element, I think, in life. Um, AJ3 says, I saw a microphone check the Tariq flick. I don't even know what that means. Um, what is all of this stuff? He said, here's what I posted. He says, what does the term fall in line mean? Have you ever watched, listened to Sean Ryan? Do you plan on making TCC merchandise? Oh, well, I didn't see any of this stuff. Fall in line means basically to, what they call stay on code, do as you're told. Like you see children in a line, like lemmings, fall in line. I don't even know who Sean Ryan is. I have no idea who that is. And making merchandise, I thought about it. I considered it. I probably want to wait for the channel to grow some more before I started doing stuff like that. Right now, I barely get 1,000 views a video. If that, probably 600 at the most. I'm lucky if I see a video get 1,000. I don't think that's enough to make merchandise. It wouldn't be worth the effort at that point. So with that's that. And then he says, in your own opinion, what are the costs, the downfall, and destruction of the Black community? How many sellouts do you think need to be canceled? Well, you got to realize when you're talking about Black folks, and I was going to get to here eventually. When you talk about a lot of them just hold themselves back, and then some of them have enough clout that they can hold other people back. Um, look at what's going on right now. I don't want to use this because it's kind of new and I don't know that much about it. But look at it. What was this? Is HBCU, right? Is asked to perform at Trump's inauguration, and you think super racist Donald Trump? Why would he be asking for a black marching band at his inauguration? But apparently he did. And the school was looking to um, raise money to make this thing happen. I guess they're going to try to travel and take the band and everything to. I would imagine if he's asking them and they're going to accept, he should pay for it. But apparently they got this thing where they're going to try to make it happen. And I guess the kids want to go. I guess I don't know. We'll see. But you saw that there was this huge outburst online about it, and I'm like, look, why does anybody care? Why take away a platform for these young people? And then you're going to say, then to give them what? To benefit you and not them? They get a chance to go to the inauguration, be a part of history, and show off their skills. And you don't want them to do that because you don't like it, you're not going to provide a platform for them to show their skills. You're just going to bitch and moan and whine and cry that they have a platform that's being given to them by somebody you don't like, that you want everybody to believe is a racist, despite the fact that he's doing this. And you just got to come to the understanding that a lot of these Negroes, man, they're tying themselves down. They got themselves all bogged down, and they're doing it to each other. And the downfall of the black community is that they have allowed the lionizing of people who are not trying to uplift, but that was always trying to infuriate. The people who got on these microphones and they screamed and they hollered and they didn't build anything. They didn't care to build anything, or anything that they did build, it was because they stole money or they intimidated somebody or something like that. And you see, that's why things never get done. Like one of my favorite sayings, I saw this on Twitter maybe like a week or two ago, and it stuck with me. It was a video of a white man stopping some broad from stealing from like a grocery store or something, right? And the comment was like, white people act like God put them in charge. Like, mind your business. So what? And it's like, when you see that kind of stuff, you realize that black people are setting themselves back, and it's all their own fault, because so many people have that thought process. They're stealing from Family Dollar, they're stealing from Walgreens, they're stealing from 7-Eleven or whatever. That's none of my business. And then you're like, how can anybody build anything? There is no community, there's no trust. You're not looking out for each other. And I say to myself, like, yo, they call these white women who call the cops, and they want to speak to the manager and all that. They call them Karens. And I say, look, Karens would not let their kids play around like, illegal dumping grounds and deal with needles on the street and all that kind of stuff. Like, Karen would have been complained. She would have been up their ass with a fine tooth comb, because she cares about her community. She cares about the organizations that operate in her community. She cares about the crime that's in her neighborhood. These Shaniquas don't. At least they try to pretend that they don't. And then when you see the black community and you say, why don't nobody does anything? Everybody sees these abandoned buildings, nobody does nothing. They see these young people just hanging out. They don't try to provide them with anything. They beg and scream and they say other people should do it. And you're like, what's happening here? And it's because they have a sense of learned helplessness. They don't think that they can affect their own lives. They don't think that they can change their own lives. So when I saw that tweet, I was like, man, that encapsulates a lot, because what you see is often white churches, come into the hood to do food drives and to clean up. And you see black churches do it too. I'm not going to say like it's not, you never see black people doing this stuff. But the fact that the white people feel like they have to show up and clean up behind you, they have to provide book bags for your children. Like, what on earth is happening here? Why are you a charity case? Because you won't do it yourself. You have no pride in the area where you live. You have no pride in the life that you live. What is the point of any of this stuff? And it came up over time. It was created over time. A sense of entitlement that somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else is going to build it. Complaining about jobs, but you're not out there trying to start any businesses. You're complaining about being, complain about slumlords. You're not trying to buy a building and give one of these people an opportunity and somewhere to live in, because if you did, that argument would vanish. You can't be an activist and a landlord at the same time. You go broke. You lose your business. You can't be an activist and run a store at the same time and just be like, oh, yeah, you can break into my store. No, nobody would do that. Nobody would be an activist and in real estate, because then they wouldn't say stupid shit like 100%, inheritance tax. They wouldn't say stupid shit like, when you break into a house and live in it, you can squatters' rights. You wouldn't do that dumb shit. So what they do is they stay out of everything, and then they turn around and say, why don't somebody else do it? We don't own anything. We don't have nothing. It's like, get up and go get it. If you see a problem, fix it. But God didn't put you in charge, I guess. So it is what it is, And so many people have just decided that they're going to screw themselves over. They're going to fuck themselves, and they insist on doing it. And then they listen to these politicians, these rappers, these musicians, and these actors who tell them, oh, nothing's your fault. It's all discrimination. Even though it's your neighborhood that you live in, that this guy doesn't live in, even though it's, your part of town, it's your kids going to these shitty schools, it's you going to these grocery stores paying $8 for eggs. You keep just saying, oh, well, so and so is saying it's white supremacy, so it's white supremacy. It's like, that's stupid. It's dumb. It's just dumb, and a lot of white people fall for it every time because it's easy to say it's somebody else's fault. And once it's somebody else's fault, it's one of the things that really changed my mind over time is, I think I forget whether it was my dad or maybe it was somebody else who said, it doesn't matter who broke it if it's your responsibility to fix it, right? So you can blame white folks, you can blame your parents, your grandparents, or whatever. It doesn't matter who broke it. It's your responsibility to fix it, right? So if things ain't going right, you see vacant lots in your neighborhood, you see, all these abandoned houses. It's your responsibility in order to clean that stuff up, or at least put in a word and say, hey, this needs to be cleaned up. Because do you really have to take, that much time to do that? It doesn't take a lot. And then when it comes to a lot of these vacant lots and stuff, especially in Detroit, they find bodies in there. When kids just disappear, sometimes they find them in, abandos. Kids use it to sell dope out of. People set them on fire, which could set the house next door on fire, and who knows if the house next door is even occupied. There's so many tragedies you can avoid if you just been a Karen and said, I care about my community, I care about the stuff that my children are involved in, I care about where I live. But so many Black people don't. They just don't. They don't care. They pretend, they'll go on TV and pretend like they care because they hope it might get them some money. But other than that, they don't really care. These people this is why they're all right with some of the stuff that goes on in these neighborhoods. They make excuses for these boys who are out here beating each other up, selling dope, shooting each other, killing each other. They come out here and make excuses because they don't care. If they really cared, they wouldn't take these excuses. They wouldn't be hearing. They weren't trying to hear that shit. And that's really the problem. You went from being a people who had pride, who wanted to build neighborhoods, who said, hey, I'm gonna keep my grass cut. I'm gonna keep my driveway snowed. My kids are gonna look nice. They're gonna be respectful. They're gonna do well in school because I'm going to make sure that they do well in school. And now it's basically I get to it when I get to it. My kid's gonna be fly and dumb because you're not gonna be able to, make sure that they're properly educated because they don't. And I'm not even talking about like individuals. I'm talking about like a large group of people. There's a large number of people who are just completely and totally inadequate, you know? And you don't need to cancel anybody. People just have to have the gift of discernment. If you follow what these people are saying to its logical conclusion and it doesn't make your neighborhood or your education system or your workplace better, then why are you listening to them? You should be looking at people who are about that action, And I understand. Look, like I said, there's these two pills, right? There's the the King Randall pill, and there's the Dr. Umar pill, right? Which one are you going to take? Because the King Randall pill is about actually going out there, getting it done. He's got the school already. He's teaching kids trades. He's making sure the kids are, and he's young. He's like 25 or something like that. He's a very young guy. And then you got the Dr. Umar pill, extremely woke. Nothing ever gets accomplished. He makes good points, but again, nothing ever gets accomplished. He's talking about the same things today that he was talking about 15 years ago. Nothing changes. And so many people will line up to take the Umar pill because he tells you what you want to hear. This stuff is white people's fault. White people have to fix it, and leave them white women alone. And he's funny. So then there's it because people niggas like being entertained. So Dr. Umar got over just by being an entertainer. He's a funny guy, but he don't get shit done. He has got nothing done. And that's the black community in a nutshell. It's always been that way. There is the Booker T. Washington, the W.B. Du Bois. Now, W.B. Du Bois actually accomplished some things, but the Booker T. Washington pill was the option. And people lined up to take the communist W.B. Du Bois pill. And I'm not going to say that Du Bois is as bad as Dr. Umar, because he's not. At least Du Bois actually did accomplish some things. All right. You give them that choice so many times so often. And what ends up happening is usually the capitalist, the free market guy, the person with the right thought, they end up supporting these socialists because we're brothers, we agree, and yada yada yada. But you don't have the same worldview, and it's not the same. Like back in the day, it was harder to delineate than it is now. Now people are delineating the fuck out of this thing. They're not going to be bothered with some of these people. But back in the 60s and 70s, it was easy for like a musician to give the Black Panthers some money. They didn't agree with the stuff that they did. They were like, oh, they're trying to help the poor, so I'm going to give them some money. Today, no. Now I know a couple of years ago, Black Lives Matter was raking it in off that shit. But most people who are more aware, they're not falling for that again. You know, so you have to realize that a lot of the black stuff is self-inflicted. It's not 1956 anymore. You're not trying to get rid of Jim Crow laws. You have so much control over your life. You could change your life in 2 years to be better than you are right now. But are you actually going to do it? Or are you going to sit back because, you know, you think that God put white people in charge? Because they're not going to fix your problems, you know? So it's ridiculous to me. You know, when people see when those white people are acting like God put them in charge because they see disorder and they don't like it. They don't like thieves and people assaulting people on trains. So they put a stop to it. That stuff does not happen in their circle. It happens in your circle because you don't give a fuck. And you keep turning your head on it. And this is what, to continue with the train thing. That it was a young woman who got set on fire on the train. Nobody helped her. Nobody did anything. This is what happens when people say, mind your own business. Why did Daniel Penny do anything? He should just minded his own business. Okay, so now there's a woman cooking on the train. Everybody just minded their own business. And now she's dead. Now what? Is that the outcome you wanted? Did it take for Jordan Neely to actually start attacking and killing people? For somebody to step up and say, oh no, that was wrong. Let me do something. Because this is what happened when this woman got set on fire. Nobody did anything. Just let her to die. This stuff is sick. It's a sick world that these people live in. And they're going to kill you, whether directly or indirectly. And that's the kind of mind process I got. These people will kill you one way or the other. Either going to be directly responsible for killing you, or their irresponsibility is going to get you killed one way or the other. And that's a tragedy, because there's a lot of people who, if they were empowered, they wouldn't let shit like this happen in their neighborhoods. But they've been abused and disempowered for so long. There used to be a time where even some goofy organization like the Fruit of Islam would have put a stop to some of this stuff. They've disempowered them over the years. So, it is what it is. I got on a ramble about that. WG feels, why do people want Black Panther and Storm when the marriage was mostly a sham that T'Challa himself pulled at King Henry? That was Reginald Hudlin's Black Power fantasy. And it stuck because that's kind of like his enduring legacy of the Black Panther story, was putting him and Storm together. Marvel breaks characters up all the time, so they've been broken up for a long time, but they've been divorced for I don't know, maybe 20 years. I think maybe not that long, maybe about 15 years, maybe. But they've been broken up a long time. But they keep going back and forth to it. Like, Storm still appears in some Black Panther comics as his wife or as a love interest or something like that. Meanwhile, the X-Men writers are booking her with Wolverine. So it is what it is, but it's a weird thing that you just can't get over it. I personally like the idea again of T'Challa with an American woman. I think it's interesting. M Studios, how you doing, sir? He says, remember that microphone check documentary that Tariq Nasheed said he was working on the colonization version of hip hop? Oh, okay, yeah. I remember that. Did it ever come out? Because if it came out, I want to watch it. If not, then don't worry about it. He says, didn't In-N-Out had to close down a successful tourist location because of theft? I believe so. In some of these areas, these places are just bouncing because of theft. They're getting the hell out of there. Because even if it's not, because think about it, it's not just theft. In places like San Francisco, it's not just that people are stealing from the store. They're also stealing people's cars out of the driveways. They're attacking people outside of the stores. It's not just theft. People are trying to be petty and look at one thing, but one thing often leads to another. It's the broken windows crime theory, which you talk to all these leftists, they'll say it's not true. But in reality, it is true. I live in Detroit. I know it's true. And by broken windows, what they mean is if you see a house when the windows are busted and nobody does anything, then the crime just continues to escalate. So you see broken windows at first. Nobody goes to jail for breaking the windows. So then you'll start having graffiti on the house. Next thing you know, there might be people squatting in the house. Then next you know the house is on fire. Somebody done burned it down. And it just continues to escalate. The same kind of people who jump the barricades on these trains and don't pay their fare are the same kind of people who attack people on the train. I mean, the kids who, don't go to school usually are the kids who start fights in the neighborhoods. Kids who are oftentimes expelled from school end up committing crimes and going to jail later. I mean, if you don't intervene, if there's no intervention, then things get worse. It's common sense. And the crazy thing is, I used to believe that broken windows is a myth. You can just have crazy stuff happen and that's not going to lead to anything. But it's not realistic. In real life, if somebody like, these Arabs who sell weed out of the gas stations, right? It's inevitable that something is going to happen if they continue to let people sell weed out of the gas stations. And half the time they do it because they get a kickback from it. So I've seen it. I go into these gas stations all the time and there's just a nigga sitting there, hands in his pockets. It's like he don't you see the guy who owned the store mopping the floor. So what is this guy doing here? Oh, he's in here selling weed. He's just going to give the guys who own the gas station a cut of it. Okay, so now when something happens, if there's a shooting at the gas station, we know what happened. They were allowing somebody to sell weed at the gas station. That stuff used to happen far more often than it does now, but it's still an issue. You know, it's one of those things that is common sense. If you don't intervene when bad things are happening, then bad things will continue to escalate. Mark Forster says there's always been a crabs in a barrel mentality with our people, unfortunately. It's not just the crabs in the barrel. Sometimes, the crabs in the barrel just kind of assume that somebody's going to try to grab your leg and pull you back in. Half the time, that's not even the case. They just write you off once you crawled out. Then you wanting to get out of the bucket completely means you're a sellout. You don't want to be in the hood anymore. You know, this is where they'll start doing shit like, and this is what was my criticism of Cat Williams. Cat Williams makes $50 million for some shit for a movie or something. Somebody else makes $56 million. All of a sudden, Cat Williams is like, oh, he must be having sex with the director. That dumb shit. And I'm not saying that the stuff doesn't happen, but how is it all the time? Like, if everybody had to suck dick to get money in Hollywood, how did you get money in Hollywood? Or it seems like it's a thing that people want to put on other folks so that they can cover up their own inadequacy. They weren't successful, so it must be some kind of blood sex ritual that occurred. And that's sometimes just even worse than the crab in a bucket. Because it tells other people the only way you can get to be like him is if you do some really degenerate shit. And so other people will be like, I'm never gonna sell my soul. And you were like, okay, well, some people did sell their souls. That's it. We ain't lying about that. And some people do try to sleep their way to the top. There ain't no lie about that either. But you can't just throw that on people. Like you just can't willy-nilly toss that on folks. And if you lead people to believe that's the only way you can become a success is if you sleep around, or you have to do some kind of Baphomet sex magic, then why would anybody try anything other than hard work and being lucky? To be quite honest, being lucky is a big part of it. But some people make their own luck, you know? So it's not always crabs in a barrel. I haven't come up with a good way to explain that, but quite often that alone will scare people off. They don't want to be involved in all these things because they think they have to do something untoward in order to become a success. Maybe call it the Florida Evans principle. Because Florida Evans, in good times, they was broke by choice because they would have all these opportunities to get out of the hood, but Florida Evans, her morals would never let her accept ill-gotten gains and all this kind of stuff. You know, even though because it seems almost like you're waiting for God's blessing, and then God sends you all these blessings, and you're just like, no, I can't take it. I won't take it because it goes against your morals, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but you can't complain. Because there are certain things some people will not do to be successful. There's been a big conversation about that on social media nowadays about what people will and won't do, should and should not do to be a success. And either you do it or somebody else will. It's that simple. AJ3 says, like New Era Detroit, I saw a video of Detroit relatives shutting down a gas station because some woman got shot and the foreigners did nothing. Yeah, they're not going to do shit because they ain't got nothing to do with them. They own the gas station. They don't want nobody getting shot at the gas station, but they're going to let people go to jail. You in there selling dope. They want their money, but if somebody get hurt, you on your own. And it's pathetic. It's truly pathetic. He said some nigga was taking a dump on the bus. See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about right there. WG Field says that H-1B controversy is a maturing lesson that both Democrats and Republicans are racist. So blacks are politically homeless because both sides just want their one side is the real racist soundbite. It's not even, well, there's a certain element of racism in that conversation. There's a large element of racism in that conversation, actually. But there's also basic protectionist ideas in that conversation. You have to be. I'm always careful of race grifters. They will take any chance they can to inject race grift into whatever they can. So obviously that conversation became a race grift conversation. It was huge. Hard to say who started it. But the race grift is what put a lot of people off. When the white nationalists and the real white supremacists started getting involved in all this stuff. And look, you can have that controversy, and the controversy is real, and the problem is a legit problem. And I'm not surprised at the controversy due to the fact that immigration is an issue. And they were galvanized behind the idea of illegal immigration. And now they don't care whether it's legal or illegal immigration, But the controversy became racial because there were grifters that decided to poke their head in there. And this is a good time to get likes on social media. So they're going to poke their head in there and say, oh, the white man is oppressed. And then they get 1,000 likes. And then if there's a bunch of other people, the white man is oppressed. And then there we go. We're off to the races. But the conversation is a legit one and worth having. Mark Forster says it was sick. It was in Brooklyn. Shit was sad. No one helped her. And the dude who did it just sat there and watched. Yeah. Ain't nobody attacked him either. Nobody kicked his ass for setting a woman on fire on the bus. Nobody tried to put her out. Everybody just cleared out and just let her die. Because that's the world you live in now. where you just watch people get murdered in the street and you just move on, go on with your day. You know, who the hell wants to live like that? That's literally a Mad Max kind of situation where, you're in a post-apocalyptic world where roving bandits will just show up, take your groceries, take your canteen full of water, rape your woman, murder you, and leave you there. And everybody else is hoping they don't get seen by the bandits. Who the fuck wants to live like that? Well, that's what happens when you structure your laws and you engage in the things that you engage with in New York. The kind of political lynchings that they do in New York, this kind of stuff happens. But there was a young guy who stabbed a homeless man who was, attacking people on the train. He didn't get arrested. There was no charges filed. So all this selective prosecution and all that stuff, man, it's like this. It's going to create a hellscape where nobody's going to feel empowered to do anything, and you're just going to let bad stuff happen to good people, which is the true definition of evil. When good people do nothing. Oh, you said isn't Doom trying to smash Storm too? I don't know. I haven't read anything about that. But if it did happen, or if it's trying to happen, I didn't see it in any comic. It might be more recent than I think. You said it's out and it's on Prime. Oh, well, maybe I'll check it out then. I don't have Amazon Prime, but I'll probably find somebody a bootleg it. Mark Forster lives in NYC, and ever since that day, that lady who was set on fire in Coney Island, Brooklyn, it's been nuts lately. Yeah, and you would think New York, you would think the governor, the mayor, the city councilman, that they will all be humiliated and ashamed that something like that would happen in their town. But nope, they just move on. Pretend it didn't happen. And, you know, that's it, It is what it is. This became a national news story that a woman got set on fire on the train. And you would think the governor or at least the mayor would come out and say, this is not what New York is. We're not going to allow this kind of stuff on our trains. But every week it seems somebody's getting pushed in front of the train, knocked out at the train station, attacked at the train station, set on fire, choked out, stabbed. It's always something in these train stations. And it's supposed to be a toll booth there to prevent these kinds of people from interacting with folks who are just trying to go to work. But again, when you don't enforce it, or you just let these people loiter, this kind of stuff happens. I'm very tired of what's going on in New York and California. It's exhausting. The amount of crime and horrible shit they just allow to occur daily. And maybe it seems like a lot because there's a lot of people in those states. But again, you should be humiliated. If you was the mayor of San Francisco and there was a poop app on people's phones to tell you where human waste is, and you become like known for needles on the street and people nodding off in the middle of the street, that would be humiliating. If you were the governor, you should be humiliated that there's a city in your state that is known for people dozing off from heroin in the middle of the street. You should be humiliated. How these people sleep at night means that they do not care. They do not care about you. They care about themselves. And then occasionally there's enough people who are pissed off that they vote somebody out. You know, like I think Chesa Boudin, who was the woke DA out in San Francisco, he got voted out. I think their stupid woke mayor got voted out. So maybe some things will change. But that's a humiliating thing. And a king would not allow that in his kingdom because he would see his kingdom as a reflection of him. But in a democracy, It's the will of the people. They just want to do heroin and nod off in the middle of the street as long as I get my votes. You know, I'm not promoting a king, by the way. I'm just saying that certain things will be an affront to people who are the leadership of an organization. You would think the same thing about the people who call themselves black leaders, right? There would be certain things that would be an absolute affront. If I was a black leader, I would not be talking about white people at all. At all. I would be offended at the fact that, look at the AIDS rate among black people. I would be offended by that. The crime rate. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on with these people? Why are you acting like that? What's happening here? The out of wedlock childbirths, the abortions, this extremely high black unemployment rate. I would be appalled at that stuff if I was a black leader. But all these quote unquote black leaders, they constantly talking about white people, what white people need to do, what they need to fix, how they need to do something for black people. And you see all these horrible things in the hoods every day, missing children, drug addicts all over the place, abandoned houses. Your elders are trapped in the house because nobody wants to shovel the snow. So grandma, who's like 70 some odd years old down the street, can't get to church because she don't know if there's a sheet of ice on her sidewalk or not. I would be offended by that stuff. I would be appalled by that. But I'm not a black leader, man. What offends your black leaders? What offends them? The fact that you people are self-destructive, that you're almost single-handedly keeping the tobacco industry alive. These dudes are smoking themselves into oblivion. And again, I'm not saying that the government needs to ban Newports. I'm just saying people need to stand up and be like, yo, why are y'all smoking so much? Maybe I should stop with the cigarettes. Maybe. Instead of worrying about people with guns, we need to worry about niggas with Newports. We need to have conversations about real issues, about how black people are destroying themselves. If I was a leader, I would care about those things. Just saying. Who's the black leader who cares about those things? You're not Umar. He will mention the homosexuals and the rate of AIDS and how black men have become the face of the AIDS movement and transgenderism. He'll talk about that. He ain't actually gonna do anything though. He ain't gonna do shit. Because to be quite honest, to be fair, ain't much you can do. Ain't much you can do. Mark Forster says he takes the bus and the train to and from work. People in New York jump the turnstile every day, but the bus is worse. No one hardly in the hood pays the fare, but downtown is a whole different story. Yeah, and this is people don't understand that sometimes something as simple as that can limit your problems. I used to feel because I ride the bus too sometimes, and there was a really horrible situation I had on the bus where a guy pulled a hatchet on another guy. This is just 2 weeks ago. I could have swore I went through that. Did I tell y'all guys about that story? If I didn't, let's tell it right now while it's on my mind. Two guys get into it on the bus. One of them, I'm not sure what was going on with him, but the other guy, they're going back and forth, calling each other bitches and all this stuff. Other guy starts talking about how he's gonna stab that dude. I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna stab you to death. Blah 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 blah. The guy says, "Look, stop threatening me. Stop playing with me." The guy keeps going on. They got kill you. Blah 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 blah. And he was like, "Go ahead and pull whatever you got. Is it a gun? You got a gun?" And nigga was like, "Nigga, I don't need no gun. Nigga, I'll stab you. Nigga, blah 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 blah." He was like, "Is it bigger than this?" And he pulled out like a fucking axe. like he was a firefighter or something. He's got like a hatchet and it's rusted and everything. And the bus driver is looking right at this shit. And she just pulls over. And she's like, hey, stop, stop, stop. And the guy with the hatchet smushes the other guy's face like, nigga, pull your knife. What you got? Blah, 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 blah. Do your thing. And the other guy just gets up and he moves. He comes sit behind me. I get my ass up. I go to the front of the bus. And when I'm going to the front of the bus, there's a guy there with a missing tooth. He's got a gym bag sitting on his lap. He unzips the gym bag, and he pulls out a pistol, a 38. And he hides it. And he looking right at me. And I'm like, I bullshit you not. This really happened. And the bus driver did not make the nigga who had the hatchet get off the bus. She didn't put the other nigga off the bus either. She didn't even see the nigga with the gun. She was too focused on these dudes arguing in the back of the bus. Now, I wasn't worried about the dude with the gun because I know why he's got the gun. Because this nigga got a hatchet and it's in his hand. Now, positives. The nigga with the hatchet is not crazy. This guy is threatening. The crazy guy is the one who's threatening him. Right? But he still pulled a hatchet. He at least got to get off the bus. At least he got to get off. He's got a weapon on the bus. And the bus driver is just kind of like, once everything calms down, the guy puts his gun back in his bag. Nobody else saw it but me. I know he got it. Dude apologized, says, oh, ma'am, I'm not going to do nothing. It's over. He shouldn't have threatened me, blah, 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 blah. He put his hatchet away. The other guy sat there quiet. And then the ride just continued. I'm like, she ain't going to call the cops. She ain't going to do nothing. She just let it slide. And I'm like, no. 4 or 5 people, we could have been hurt in here. There are people with weapons on the bus. What are you doing? And you just let it slide. And the guy with the hatchet, he's not going to do anything, but he's not over it. He's still jawing. Nigga talk about he gonna stab me. Nigga, you ain't gonna stab shit. I'm like, man, at least he got to get off. Or I should have just got off the bus, if we're being honest. You know, I wasn't thinking about it at the time. But I'm like, I should have stepped off. And at least if they're going to start having, a hatchet fight on this motherfucker, at least I'm not going to be on it and be witness to it. But everybody just acted like it was normal. There was people sitting back there, it's kind of like not paying attention. I was paying attention. I was waiting for the bus driver, the person who is literally in charge, to do something. She didn't do shit. Now I'm able to discern from the situation that at least the nigga with the hatchet ain't, he don't want to use the hatchet. But he wanted to make the other guy realize that he has it. Just like the guy with the gun. He didn't want to shoot anybody. But he wanted to make sure that this thing stays contained between these two guys. Right? I could have sat there and kept scrolling through my phone and not paying none of that stuff any attention. But that ain't how I roll. Right? Now, I didn't get involved in it. But I sat there. I made sure that those two guys were far away from each other. And I was far away from the rest of them. Right? Because I was kind of close at first. Because the guy who was talking about stabbing the other guy, he was like a couple of seats behind me. And then he came and sat right behind me after the guy pulled the hatchet and he got smushed in the face. But that's crazy. And look, the guy with the hatchet paid his fare. I'm not even sure the other guy did. But these bus drivers, they know that there are people on these buses who are aggressive. They're, mentally ill. And they give them free rides. And I understand it. I get why they do that. But sometimes that's a barrier to entry for a reason. Because people who ain't got no money, you can't pay $2 to get from one side of town to the other. More than likely, ain't got shit going, right? You can't scratch up $2. You know, 8 quarters. Come on, man. You could bum $2 just by sitting at the goddamn bus stop for an hour. But that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the beast. And I don't like living like that. That's why I don't ride the bus all the time. I would rather Uber anywhere I gotta go. But sometimes some places are just too far to Uber. It's just too far. He says no one takes Mayor Adams seriously since he's been indicted. Well, that's true. That's true. He said your boy Zach has reached 94,000 followers. That's like 10,000 according to his social blade. Might be interesting how his crowdfund goes after this. Is he down 10,000? WWE TNA full says Chicago is another toxic dump with Brandon Johnson just letting shit loose. Yeah, and anytime you criticize that motherfucker, he turns into Ta-Nehisi Coates. You're not gonna do that. You're not gonna talk about how the black man is blah blah blah. Like, man, shut your ass up. You ain't the first black mayor of Chicago, nigga. Why do y'all stay back and let these dudes play these games with you? Chicago been a black city for a long time. Why is y'all letting this guy play these games? Anytime that the news criticize him, it's always the black man being hit. Like, man, shut your ass up. Like, what is wrong with these people, man? I be letting these dudes do this stuff. He's the mayor. He's not some oppressed black man. Somebody really needs to, again, but Chicago is corrupt. And New York is also corrupt. And Detroit is also corrupt. I mean, it is what it is. If you had a fierce media who would say, look, Brandon Johnson, you're not the first black mayor of Chicago. Why are you talking like that? Most of your constituents are black. We're talking about an economic issue here. We're talking about a blankety blank issue here. It ain't got nothing to do with you being a black man. Or is it impossible for you to discuss issues without talking about how black you are? Which is what it is, because that's how 99% of Negroes you see on TV, if they ain't talking about being black, they ain't talking about nothing. It's unfortunate. AJ3 says, now is not the time to be grifting and following code. Get all these illegals out now. Can they stick to their word? They do need to get the illegals out of here. The illegals is on some bullshit. It says the man with the hatchet pulled the vents and said, excuse me while I whip this out. Oh my God. There was a time when if I was younger, I would have thought it was funny. Legit. In the moment though, I wasn't even scared. Because the anger, I've had like schizophrenics and stuff with their anger directed at me. And I still don't get scared. I've had guys throw chairs at me. I've had guys flip tables while I'm sitting at the table. I've had guys scream in my face. I'm desensitized to a lot of the crazy shit. And I've had guns put on me. So I wasn't scared. I was sitting there like, bus driver, this nigga got a hatchet. Do something. You know? Like at least threaten to call the cops. You know, like something. But I know she just went back to her little port and told everybody it was a nigga on the bus with a hatchet smoking a cigarette or something like that. Like, this is normal. This ain't normal. Now, I'm not saying that the guy should have went to jail and the guy with the gun probably would have got jammed up too. But I'm saying, like, looking at these situations, like, you can't let this level of disorder occur. Because what if the dude changes his mind? What if the other guy says something and he really starts hacking at this dude? Then it's going to be like, well, you pulled over and you didn't make the guy get off the bus. You didn't call the cops. You didn't do nothing. It's weird, man. It says, do you think Mr. Terrific looking a Superman movie is kind of racist? I saw the girl who made a clip about it. No, because that's how he looked in the comics. He had the black tee on his face and everything with the jacket. He looked the same in the Mr. Terrific series. I don't understand. Do these Negroes read comic books? I don't know. You said he's down 10,000. He peaked and stopped at 104,000, and now it's in free fall. I wonder why he's doing that to himself. You know, I wonder what's going on over there. I know he's still coughing his videos too. Like, it's very weird. It's very weird. Like, is he doing it on purpose? You know, like, uh, I haven't listened to a Zach video in a long time though. I don't even follow him anymore. I think I unfollowed him a long time ago. And I heard Razor Fist took a couple shots at him too. So he's really out there. But I don't listen to his channel anymore. He don't really do reviews anymore. Um, Everything that was fun about him went away, you know. But it seemed like him and Just Some Guy both decided to nuke their channel. But Just Some Guy, at least it came out while he was having that problems because he's a gay black atheist. So things got weird for him. I didn't unfollow him because once he said that, I understood it. You know, he's not politically conservative at all. He just was anti woke, but in reality, he's not a conservative. So I wasn't tripping on that. And I still don't mind how he tries to articulate his positions, even if I don't agree with him. But Zach, I don't even understand what the fuck he's going on. I don't know why he does any of the stuff he does. I don't know. It's too chaotic. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not listening to any of these videos anyway. So unsubscribe. It is what it is. But his was like, I think Just Some Guy might be the last of the quote unquote comics gate channels that I actually followed. And he mostly does TV and pop culture stuff now. He rarely does comics. He's not even a regular uploader either. So maybe that helps is that he's not a regular uploader, so I don't get bombarded with a lot of his dumb shit. But it's fine. And he's not gay, he's bisexual. I'm sorry. I gotta correct that. But even though the nigga's gay, okay. Gozu is not familiar with your boy Zach. Well, let me tell you, that's a long story. His channel used to be called Diversity in Comics. Then he changed it to Comics Matter with your boy Zach. And he was known mostly as being one of the more extreme anti-woke YouTubers. And he used to do fun stuff like setting comics on fire, ripping them up. We used to love the rips. The rips were great. When he went away from the rips, it became a problem. That's when he started doing mostly digital comics. Because, and I understood why he couldn't go to the comic book store anymore, you know, because once people knew what he looked like, going to things like conventions and going to the comic book store might be a problem. So I understood. But and then he started having some really awkward opinions about how other people review comics. And so I think that stuff started happening around Furiosa. Like he really liked the Furiosa movie, and a couple of other people really didn't. They kind of wrote it off as being woke trash, and so he became anti woke, and that nuked his channel. And he's been doing nothing but doubling and tripling down ever since. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, I stopped listening to him over a year ago, you know, and he's been doing nothing but doing damage to his channel ever since. But I don't know how guys get that way. Maybe there's a message in all of this madness. I don't know what it is. But once he started offending a lot of people who, for a long time, were, I don't want to say allies because that might not be the right word, but people who were not against his views. Like, it's not that your boy Zach started siding with the wokies. That's not what happened. what happened is he started attacking the anti-wokes. The critical drinkers, the geeks and gamers, and all of those people who have substantial followings. He started attacking them for literally no reason. And that's sad. AJ3 says the sellout part, I got that from one of the Chicago flip red ladies saying we need to cancel all the Democratic pendants and come up with the name Diddy Cracks. I get why people say that, we need to get rid of these people, yada, yada, yada. Look, if you have the gift of discernment, these people will just go away. Like sometimes they score and they take themselves out of the game, like Patrice Cullors. Like she got the bag and then vanished. Like she got the bag and she disappeared, But and some people that's what is going to happen. They're going to get the bag and then they're gone. But others, you expose them enough, like somebody like Ibram X Kendi, he got exposed so much that he doesn't have any influence anymore. And nobody needed to cancel him. They just kept exposing him. Black academics, white academics, everybody was on this dude's head. They was kicking his ass every week. And eventually, now the only people who really listen to him are white liberals, who was the only people who was listening to him in the first place. He has no real footprint anymore. He used to be on Twitter all the time. You see his tweets all the time. You would see videos of him all the time. Not so much anymore, especially in the last 5 or 6 months. You don't see a lot of Ibram X Kendi. And Ta-Nehisi Coates even moved on to a new grift. And now he's doing the Israel-Palestine grift. So there's a lot of stuff happening when you just expose these people over and over again. You can destroy their fan base, But you got to be open and honest and tell the truth, WWE Teen April says, what Civil War is fixing to more entertain across the board for the next 4 years than for the Republicans? Well, the Democrats they're going to find a reason to galvanize everybody because that's what they do. They build coalitions. I think that there's a lot of the MAGA umbrella was a little too large. And a lot of the people who like I said, are race grifters. They're going to force the issue on legal immigration. They're going to fight that. And most people are not really all that affected by legal immigration. Yes, it has an effect. It's not that it's not no effect at all, but most people don't see it. Illegal immigration is what you actually see, because a lot of those, you see caravans of people coming across the border, and then you see that they're engaging in criminal behaviors. So a lot of that stuff you actually start seeing, and it becomes a problem. But it's going to be a big issue for Republicans because they're the ones in power. They're the ones with the authority right now. So the Democrats are in critique position. All they got to do is be consistent in how they critique things. And if Trump doesn't make things better, then the quote unquote woke right are just going to go back to being the woke left, which is what they probably would have been in the first place. They're all for the protectionism and the DEI programs. They just want it for white people. That's all. And we already knew that. Like there's nobody, I think, that entertains right-wing politics who didn't know that those people already existed. And they could have told you a lot of the race grifters tend to be liberals. Well, they're Democrats. Let's put it like that. Like the most noted race grifter is what's the name of that white boy? I forget what his name is, but he's a Democrat. He's always been a Democrat, and it's not been shy about it. David Duke was a Democrat. These people are not. They're not hiding who they are. You know, it's the Democrats who keep saying we don't want any white nationalists, but the white nationalists are still Democrats. The Republicans don't pander to white nationalists, and the white nationalists aren't Democrats in the first place. I mean, aren't Republicans in the first place. They're Democrats, and they almost always are. But there were some white nationalists in the MAGA movement, and everybody pretty much knew that too. You said, did you see Al Sharpton got into some drama? I thought he would have lost his influence since the Tanya Harding thing. I don't think Al Sharpton has any influence for real. You know, he's propped up by MSNBC, but I don't think anybody really listens to him. I don't know when the last time I saw somebody who was young and thought anything of Al Sharpton. That's the thing. Like when a lot of these quote unquote black leaders get old, their influence starts to wane because there's young people who are more radical, crazier, quite honestly. And I've said this before. Like when you had Du Bois, and you know he was more radical than Booker T. Washington, and then you know he helps create the NAACP, and then the NAACP they're not as radical as you know Garvey's United Negro Improvement Association. They're not nearly as radical as them, and then the the bus boycotts from Martin Luther King not nearly as radical as the NAACP, or more radical than the NAACP. I mean, they even criticized them. And then you had the Black Panthers, a SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were more radical and than the civil rights movement. You know, the Martin Luther Kings and all of them. And the Black Panthers were even more radical. And then the there was another Black Liberation Army. There's another one that was more radical even than the Black Panthers. And then it cooled down for a while in the 70s after they started shooting police officers and bombing buildings. And then, you know, it started up again with the Rainbow Push Coalition and, you know, 1980s with Jesse Jackson. And then Black Lives Matter is just a more radical version of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And so there's going to be another group, who knows when, and they're going to be more radical in Black Lives Matter. And that's how it works. You know, and Al Sharpton was able to coast during the Jesse Jackson years because him and Jesse Jackson have been pretty much 1-to-1 on every issue. I don't think they disagreed on anything. You know, so it's an interesting bit. AJ3 says, what do you say to all those people, black people, who left the Democratic Party, now want to help the Republicans take control? What do you think they need to do? The number one thing that they need to do is not worry about Democrats and Republicans, but actually focus on fixing their own neighborhoods and taking advantage of what the Republicans want to do. If they want to cut regulations, take advantage of it. They want to make people make it easier for people to get homes or jobs or whatever. Take advantage of that, and pay attention to what the Democrats don't want you to do. What they don't, the chances they don't want you to take, the opportunities that they want to take away from you. You know, pay attention to all that stuff. You know, another interesting bit about this H-1B visa situation is Elon Musk. Once he got reamed over that thing. Him and Vivek got destroyed over that thing. I agree with them, but they got destroyed over that thing, right? So he came later and said, just raise the minimum wage for them. And I was like, oh, everybody's willing to agree that the minimum wage is a weapon. It is not a positive thing. It is a weapon. You can just get rid of the program. You don't have to raise the minimum wage. Jesus Christ. Come on. You better off just banning the damn thing at that point. But you can't stop people from hiring who they want to hire. You know, that's basically my thing. And somebody did a pretty good deep dive into that and found that a lot of the companies that engage in the H-1B visa abuse thing are actually Indian companies that have bases in the United States, and they use the H-1B visas to bring Indians to the United States. I'm not mad at that. It's an Indian company, so what? Um, but I get it. You know, the competition is too stiff. You know, the system is clogged. The unemployment rate among natural born Americans is super high, especially Black Americans. So I get it. You know, I 100% understand why people are mad. I just think that you can't tell people how to operate their businesses. That's what socialists want to do. You can't do that. You have to be free market or fuck off. I mean, or just go be a Democrat. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You want to have protect. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. That's why I don't understand why all these unions was on the side of Trump. I didn't get it. I mean, okay. I don't like protectionism in the workplace. It causes a bunch of problems. You know, all of our unemployment issues are mostly artificial. You know, because we got so many garbage things like minimum wages and unions and all this shit. All of this stuff is mostly artificial. People would be able to find jobs if they were able to negotiate, and I mean negotiate down, do the job for less. You know, but people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to have a real conversation about that kind of stuff. They don't want to have a real conversation about that. You know, this is where the American entitled situation steps in, and this is what makes Vivek and Elon correct. It's because people don't want to have a real conversation about what the cost of labor should be. That our labor costs are inflated artificially by minimum wages and unions and benefits and all this kind of stuff. And companies have a tough time paying that shit, you know, or overpaying for labor that they can get for cheap. It's not fair to the company that they should pay more for labor, especially if they can't sell their product. And maybe they can sell their product, you just don't want to pay for labor. It's the same thing. Like just because you might be able to afford a $40 loaf of bread doesn't mean you want to pay $40 for that loaf of bread. You know, you might be able to afford to give some American $100,000 to do some job. Doesn't mean you want to. Like if you want the best, you might want to do that. But if you just need the job to get done, then yeah, go hire a Guatemalan or something to do it. I don't think that should be the government's job to do that, though, to make those decisions or force other people to make those decisions. That's just simple. Libertarians are usually against what government force. But whatever. Happy New Year, Alfred Hardwin. Follow your heart, not man. Yeah, to be more correct, it probably should be follow God, not man. WG Phil says there's like four subjects of the Republican Party: that Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Judeo-Christian who got the video games, anime censored, dejected Democrats who are mostly Trump supporters, Wingnat, Fizz, and Fuentes. I hate them types. The GOP, the Judeo-Christian Daily Wire, who want to censor entertainment, the Trump vote, the Wingnat, Fizz, Nick, and more racist side. At least they're more honest about it. Yeah, I'll say this: there's a lot of crossover to these groups, um, because if you talk about banning porn, that's one of those things that everybody's going to be for on the GOP side, and in the Daily Wire thing, that's one of their big issues of wanting to ban porn. I'm pretty sure the Wingnat guys, most of them are homos anyway, so they're supposed to be religious as well, so a lot of them are all about banning porn and OnlyFans and all that kind of stuff. It's a cultural issue. The difference is going to be mostly in economics. You know, and I kind of agree with the JD Vance conception of America not being an economic zone, but it's kind of an economic zone. It kind of always have been, bro. Like I get that you think that this is blood and soil, but not really. Like it wasn't meant to be. It was supposed to be like the land of freedom and opportunity, and freedom and opportunity applies to everybody in the world. You know, people are going to come here from everywhere in search of a better life, but we have to have some measure of control over this thing. We can't have unfettered Guatemalans pouring into the country, getting free hotel rooms, and all sorts of welfare because we have to pay for that. You know, it's a completely different thing if a company is willing to pay to bring an Indian over here. Then he's responsible for that, not the federal government, not the taxpayer of Michigan or Arizona or whatever. Then that's his problem. The Indian guy is his problem. You bring in unfettered Colombians into the United States, that's the average Joe on the streets problem, and that's not fair. You know, so I get it. I understand both sides of the argument, but generally speaking, I'm just I don't see how you can be for protectionism and think that's going to do well. And you're going to destroy your free market at that point. You know, but I think most of the time, mostly what happened is a lot of people decided they wanted to take what Vivek said and make it racial when it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. He basically was saying that your competition is not as soft as you are. You know, and instantaneously in my mind, I took it to a couple of generations ago when people like my granddad was leaving like Alabama, right? He couldn't find a job in Alabama. It's racism in Alabama. He took he left. He went up to Michigan and he found a job working, I believe, at Ford. And there was no paid time off, no overtime, no sick days. He didn't negotiate how many hours he got to work. He didn't work in a cushy office, where he could drink Starbucks and shit all day. So when I think about what he had to do, because he wanted the opportunity, whenever I see Americans complain about amenities for jobs, I realize you are not your ancestors, because your ancestors didn't have the opportunity to sit down and talk about how many hours am I working per week. They didn't give a fuck about work-life balance. My granddad worked every single goddamn day for over 40 years. He still managed to have 4 kids and own a house. All right. So all this bullshit about I don't want to work 80 hours a week. Huh, I don't want to do that. Like, dude, you're talking about when you talk about tech jobs, you're not talking about like this guy's gonna climb a pole or anything like that. Like this stuff is sick. It's stupid. It's entitlement. You think you are entitled to a job when you're not. The job is an opportunity. And if you want the opportunity or you don't. And the way I see it is a lot of these people are complaining about jobs they don't want anyway. You don't want to put in the time. You don't like to pay. You don't want to work with certain coworkers. You don't even want to go to the office, really. Then you don't want that job anyway. So who cares who does it? I don't care who the janitors are, bro, because I don't want that job. I don't give a shit. Now, there are jobs that in which that stuff matters, right? Like I'm tired of calling, Bank of America, or whatever, and I'm getting some Indian who don't understand English, and I don't understand what the fuck he's saying either. Okay, that's a concern. If I have to call T-Mobile because something's going on with my phone, and I get some Pajit on the other line, I'm not a fan of that. But ultimately, 9 times out of 10, I don't care who doing these jobs, man. The thing is, it's not about the work. I'm gonna tell you exactly what it's about. It's about status. These tech jobs are seen as status symbols. And there's a lot of people, a lot of these mediocre white guys for whom they want that status symbol. I work in tech. But you don't want to put in the effort. You don't want to put in the work. So somebody else gets that opportunity and they make the most of it. And this is why the Pajeets end up being the CEOs of Google and IBM and all this kind of stuff, right? They willing to put in the work. They don't argue about how many hours they have to work. They don't care. And once you have that, you can't beat it. I get it, man. It's tough. I get it. I get it. You don't want, the Pajeets to show up and drive the wages down and all that. I get it. But your your response to that is to just have the government control more of the market. That's your response. It's the government to take control of the tech industry and demand that they hire certain people, which is the government being in control of the means of production. You can't do that. You can't do it. Just hope that people, start their own firms, competing firms, and that would be for the best, I would think. WG Phil says the H-1B thing is kind of funny, seeing the white people of the party feeling like they are being oppressed and jobs they don't want or won't do, but will say those same sentiments about other minorities. And that's really what set it all off is Elon Musk and Vivek were talking about mediocre white people, the way the mediocre white people talk about Negroes and Hispanics. And they didn't like that. They did not like that. They did not like that. But it's true. They told them the truth. Your grandparents did not negotiate, when they were struggling and they didn't have anything. There was no, I don't want to work this job because I have to work too many hours. They wouldn't have gave a fuck. Whatever got your foot in the door. You can work out, all that kind of stuff once you start getting some experience. That's not the conversation that they wanted to have, though, brother. You said Cash Patel is going to release the P. Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein client list. Well, he's going to get shot if that happens. I'm knock on wood. That's definitely something somebody's going to get killed over. Because there's going to be some names on there. It's going to make it hard to smile. WG Phil says there's like the red pill, black pill side, but that kind of offshoot of Trump. Yeah, I guess. Gozu says, I feel like the immigrants in general, as long as they have money to take their families, they will work. At least the ones with integrity. Yeah. And that's the thing, like being mad at the Pajeets, man, it's stupid because I don't have to pay for the Pajeets. I don't care. You know? And I was going to tell the story on Twitter. I'll just tell it here because you guys actually listen to me. When I was 22 years old, I went to go work for a place called CL Automotive. It doesn't exist anymore. It used to be for Lear. Lear is a big car manufacturer. It partners with GM, Chrysler, all that kind of stuff, right? We were working 72 hours a week. 72 hours a week. Okay. We were working 6 days a week, 12 hours. And they would pull this bullshit where, I would work the night shift and I was working, 4 to, what was this, 4 to 12, I think. And then they would pop up and be like, we need you to work 10 hours. We need you to work the whole 12. And so you went from thinking you about to leave in 8 to getting to stay 4 more hours. I did that shit for a year. I was miserable. I got fired from that job. And because my mama worked there, they brought me back. Right. And I was only really working there because my mama worked there. But I was miserable. I was 22. I had money, but I had no time. I hated that job. I hated it. And then one day it was gone. It was just gone. Right. The the black owners decided, they didn't want to pay the pay raise. that the union had decided they wanted to have, and so they were going to ship the jobs out of there. They broke down the company. They opened up another similar plant across the street with no union, and then they moved some of the jobs to Mexico. And I didn't even bother to apply. I didn't care. I did not want that lifestyle. So I understand what these people are saying when they say, I don't want to work all those hours. What about my family? What about blah, blah, blah? I get it. I was 22 and was doing that stuff. I hated it. I hated that job. I hated that life. I was miserable. But that's when I realized that the people who were okay with that, who were happy to have it, those were completely different people. There's jobs that are just not for me. That was not for me. For starters, I don't want to work in a plant. And I don't want to work all those hours. I'm willing to make less. I'm willing to make less to have more free time. I'm willing to make less so there'll be less, stress on my body. I'm willing to make less. It was okay. It was a decision I had to make, and I made that decision. And I went to college after that because I said to myself, I don't ever want to be in this position again. I don't ever want to be in a position where the only job I can get is a job that I hate. And I had to go into debt to do that. All the debt I could have never went to college and just kept going from factory to factory like so many other people do in Detroit. But I said, I did it once, never again. You're not going to get me again. You're never going to get me again. I'm not doing it. And so I work in an office now, and people are always looking at me like, you don't take no days off. Like I didn't take a day off this whole year. Even when I was sick, I still went to work because I only work 8 hours a day. I only work 8 hours a day. I show up. I'm most of my work done is like in like 6 or 7 hours actually, and then I steal an hour. Then I go home, and sometimes I'm tired, but it's nothing like what it used to be when I was working 12 hours a day and I was catching the bus at midnight. Not at midnight. I'm talking at 4 in the morning. That midnight would have been 8 hours. I was catching the bus at 4 in the morning on Woodward. I had homos trying to pick me up at the bus stop. I'm looking at trannies walking the strip on Woodward. Everything about that pissed me off. Everything. Never again. I don't care how much Chrysler is paying. I don't give a fuck how much GM is paying. I don't want that. All right. I don't want it. Those who says they don't give you PTO at your job, they do. I just don't take it. They actually trying to make me take days off. I think they're gonna make me take days off. I know. They said it already. They said about a month ago that I'm way over the limit, so they're gonna make me take days off. But they haven't decided when yet. I had to work last week by myself because my colleague took the whole week off for Christmas. So I'm pretty sure either they're gonna probably make me take the next week off or something like that. But the thing is, I don't mind the job. I could probably use an extra day or so off here, here and there. I would love to be able to take off a Friday and a Monday and have a 4 days off or whatever. That would be great. But I don't trip on that because I've been through worse. you know, I've been through worse. And having that experience of working those 12 hours, 6 days a week, man, not having a day off in 300 days or whatever, it's nothing. Nothing. Because I work in an office. Okay. I'm not out there destroying myself. Now, when I was working on the floor directly with the patients, that's a 12-hour shift. but it's only 3 days a week. So I was doing that too. I didn't take any days off. I didn't take any days off then either. I didn't need to. Sometimes I would get 2, 3 days off in a row. So I was fine. It was just mentally stressful. But today, I'm not really all that stressed out at work, you know? But when you work in the office, they try to make you take those days off and everything. So they're gonna eventually make me take those days off because they're not gonna pay me up for them. So they're gonna make me take them. So whatever. I may decide to try to kick them to April and take my birthday off or something like that. But I don't care. Like that's the thing. Like it don't bother me to work because I know things could be worse. You know, and I always worked hard on everything that I've done. And sometimes working hard don't get you nowhere. Sometimes it just gets you more work. And trust me, even in the office job, sometimes that's the case. I work hard, bust my ass, and then it just creates more work. But I'm not going to half-ass it and then have to try to clean up messes all day. I don't want to do that. So it is what it is. But for me, it's a simple equation. Either you want the lifestyle or you don't. You don't want that lifestyle that the Pajeets is willing to go out there and do, then don't worry about the Pajeets. I don't care about them. They could be the CEOs of every fucking company in the country. They ain't gonna get me in the office for 80 hours a week. I can tell you that. I would quit before I do that. Because I realized this 18 years ago. I value my free time more than money. But I'm also a single man with no kids. Right? For the people out there who have children, who have wives, this kind of, working 12 hours or whatever, it might be what he got to do. And I'm not going to begrudge anybody for doing that. And this is one thing that that pissed me off about the H-1B conversation. People have absolutely, positively have got to stop equating difficult work with slavery. That pissed me off so much because those motherfuckers don't know what it's like to be slaves. You are asking to go work to this. When you put in a resume, you're asking for a job. By that very definition, you are not a fucking slave. And you can quit that job whenever you want. So you're not a slave. But that just goes into the mindset of these people who think that these jobs are supposed to be like genies and you rub the lamp and they give you whatever you want. Without realizing that that's not the case. These companies got all kind of overhead. Who knows how many other people they have to hire? Your job might not, it might have been a big deal 20 years ago, but it ain't that big of a deal now. You just got to think about these things. You just got to consider these things, man. And I always say, like, if something happens and, my job is one of those things that's always going to exist, though. So I can't really say that. But if you were one of those people who are going to be replaced by computers or something like that, I feel bad for you. I feel bad, really. WG Field says, took me 3 factory warehouse jobs that made me realize I needed to take my ass back to school. Some people don't ever get that. And some people are not good in school. And they don't. See, just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means it's a challenge for you. Right? So many people, they hate school, but it's the only thing that separates them from the life that they want. It might be the thing that separates you from the life that you want. Quite often, the thing that you hate the most is the thing that separates you from the life that you want. It's the river that you must cross. When I decided to change from one position to the other, it required for me to do some stuff I don't like. Talking to the bosses. Yeah, going, doing all that, all this politicking kind of shit. I don't like that stuff. But it got me where I wanted to be. So can't be mad. I'm not mad. I got what I wanted out of it. And I didn't have to do a lot of it either because I had education and I had a good, rapport with everybody and everything. So I didn't have to kiss any ass. But when I decided that I wanted to do something else, they all respected it and was like, okay, well, we can't tell you no because it's not like you're a fuck up, But if they'd have told me no, I would have quit. And they don't know that, but that's what would have happened. So and I didn't, I'm not gonna give nobody no ultimatum and tell them. That's why I don't really make a big deal about pay raises. See, that's the thing. Like a lot of the regular office shit, I don't complain about. I don't complain about how much I get paid. I don't complain about why we got to work on Christmas Eve. I don't know why I'm working on Christmas. I don't care about that. That's fine. Because when I was working on the floor, I had to work Christmas Day, and I had to work Thanksgiving Day. It was bullshit. And when it was bullshit, right? And that shit kept happening to me. I kept every holiday, everybody wanted to take off. It would be just me there. That's bullshit. But I punched through it. Don't complain. Because then when you actually step up and you want something and you make it known, hey, I want to do this or this needs to change, then they're more likely to do it because you don't complain about everything. So, but I always say like my life is not nowhere near what I want it to be, but it's so much better than it was a couple of years ago. Like the improvements are steady. It's not leaps and bounds, but I can tell that things are getting better over time. And that's really all I asked for. Because when I was, again, 22, stuck in those factories, bro, I couldn't tell Monday from Wednesday. The only thing changed was the bank account. I had a girlfriend, I never saw her. We never got to hang out. We never got to do anything. On an off chance that I might actually get a Saturday off, that might be the only time I saw her. That was fucked. That was not good. That wasn't good. But I probably have a pretty high tolerance for bullshit in real life because I realize the only thing you can control is yourself. And if you get emotional about everything, and sometimes I do get an attitude if the young lady that I work with continues to take days off, like for sometimes it would seem like she was not coming to work on pay Friday. She wasn't coming, which is a very young people thing. That I get paid this Friday, so I won't be there. I'll take Friday off. That kind of aggravated me, but I was like, you know what? Who cares? It's one day. I've held down that office for months by myself. Who cares about one day or 2 days extra or I had to carry the whole week. Nothing. No problem. No problem. I used to have to do this shit Monday through Friday, 5 or 6 days. And they used to say, like, do you even want help? I'm like, I don't want to work by myself. I'm just not going to complain about it either. Because there's nothing I can do about it. Right? I can't go out and hire anybody. So I'm just going to do what I do. And I'm going to take my time. Because my shift is 8 hours. Period. And I may give you 8:15, I may give you 8:30. If it's absolutely necessary. But for the most part, 8 o'clock, that's it. I'm out. I mean, 8 hours, I'm out. I'm done. And hell, I might even leave at 7. He told me to stop doing that though, so whatever. Get the fuck up out of here, bro. Mark Forster says, I hear you talk about your job. I work 6 days a week, and Sundays are my only day off. I mostly work to fund my photography because that's my passion. I hate it, but I got bills and I believe in my craft. See, you got something that you want to do. In the future, when the photography thing starts to take off for you, if it ever does, which it probably will, you're going to realize what you had to do to get there. And other people will not have to do what you had to do, but you can't worry about them. You have to worry about you. And you'll know your story. And I tell people that all the time, like, I don't know how so-and-so got here where they are. And I don't really care. But if it's an interesting story, it's an interesting story. Some people work very, very hard. And it's like in college, some people worked themselves through college, some people didn't. And those who didn't, more than likely have hella debt because they were living off of financial aid checks. But it is what it is. Everybody's road is different. You gotta Once you've pinpointed what you want to do with your life, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a passion, work is just a way to fund that. You know, that's what, and that should keep you going. It's not going to keep you going forever, but it should keep you going. And then you have to start making incremental steps into doing what you want to do. So as long as you stay focused, you should be doing okay. Gozu says, wait, or you are able to carry over your PTO. You are lucky. My job, you either use or PTO or lose it for the year. They said they were going to pay me for it. That's what they said. Now, I ain't tripping about whether they do or don't. And they think I don't apply pressure on that kind of stuff. I don't care. But if you're telling me that you're going to take it if I don't use it, then I'm going to use it. Right? I would rather use it than have you take it. you know? Which is the thing is the only 2 days left in the year anyway, after tomorrow and Wednesday. I mean, tomorrow and Tuesday. So I'm not taking tomorrow off. I'm going to work tomorrow. Maybe they'll tell me not to come in on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then, maybe that'll be it. But for the most part, it's supposed to, I'm over the rollover limit. And that's the big issue. They're like, oh, we have to figure out what to do. The other, they just changed my boss too. This was also why, this has become a big deal. So now the other guy used to just ask me randomly, hey, we need you to take a day off. How about Friday? I'm like, all right, fine. Who cares? I don't give a shit. I'll take Friday. I'll just sleep a little bit extra on Friday, But otherwise, I don't think about it. I don't think about days off. I think about holidays because I don't want to show up and then we don't have to be there, But to be quite honest, I don't even pay attention to that. If nobody told me, because I didn't know we didn't have to. I thought we didn't have to work Christmas Eve. And then they said, okay, we do have to work Christmas Eve. I was like, okay. They was waiting for me to complain about it. And I was like, all right. And then on Christmas Eve, I left early. I was done for the day, so I left early. So they didn't say anything about that one though. Absolutely, Mark. We wish everybody well over here, man. And it's been 2 hours. Whew, I gotta use the bathroom too. So I appreciate everybody for stopping by for the final stream of the year. I may do another stream, maybe New Year's Day or maybe New Year's Eve. I don't know if I have to work New Year's Eve or not. It doesn't matter because I don't have to work New Year's Day, I'm pretty sure. But thank you all for coming by. Thank you all for being subscribed to the channel. And oh shit, what is Mark saying here? He says where I was 2 years ago, I lost my apartment, laptop, and cameras were stolen. I was in a dark place, but I got through it and got things back in time and still funded new equipment. See, that's what I'm talking about, man. A huge setback like that would have really set some people down, and they'd have been down in the dumps about it, and it would have been a reason to quit. But it's something that you wanted to do. something that you believe in. So keep going, you know. And I'm very proud of you, man. So you happy New Year, Gozu. Have a happy New Year. You know, WG Phil, the rest of you guys have happy New Year. AJ3, Smooth Realism, happy New Year. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.